concerns about the deadly coronavirus officially hitting the U.S. Here's what we know. A Washington state resident fell ill after returning from Wuhan, China, where the outbreak began. Officials now say more than 400 people have been sickened and 9 people have died.
The full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency. 2 very big words. The action I am taking will open up access to up to $50 billion of very important and a large amount of money for states and territories and localities in our shared fight against this disease. In furtherance of the order, I'm urging every state to set up emergency operation centers effective immediately. You're going to be hearing from some of the largest companies and greatest retailers.
Thank you for joining us. We're going to begin with breaking news because more than 1/4 of Americans are now being ordered to stay home. Today, the governors of New York, Illinois, and Connecticut joined California and Pennsylvania, shutting down most businesses. Workers considered essential are exempt, and grocery stores, pharmacies, and takeout restaurants will stay open in those states. This all comes as U.S. coronavirus cases now top 17,000.
Country, pastors are making the tough decision to keep their churches closed. They're saying it's too dangerous to praise in person. New York Times reporting more than 650 coronavirus cases have been linked to nearly 40 churches and religious events across the country, many over the last month. An alternative, many churches have opted to stream their services on YouTube and Facebook. It's nowhere near the same experience as gathering and fellowship, but Cecilia, many pastors feel it's the safest thing to do right now.
Jerra Gentry III, founding pastor, lead apostle at Freedom Church International, formerly Free Indeed Church in Northeast Houston. I'm founder and CEO of Community Works, Community Development Corporation. We're a 501c3 that serves Northeast Houston to restore the Northeast community through faith-based programs that promote at-risk youth services, workforce development, and neighborhood revitalization.
Hi, my name is Ebony Darden. I am 26 years old and I am from Houston, Texas.
So I go by Trey Cosmos. I am 30 years old. I'm from H-Town by way of Baytown, Texas. You already know. Don't make the face. It's East Side all day, baby.
My name is Shamika Sanders, and I am in my 30s. And that's all you need to know.
I'm Jeremy Sanders. I'm 36 years old, and straight out my mama house, y'all.
When I first heard about the pandemic, I was a bit skeptical. I'm somewhat of a conspiracy theorist. I didn't trust government, didn't trust leadership in our government, and I thought that the pandemic was a ploy to elicit federal money to do something spooky and to do something underhanded against the Black community. Those were my initial thoughts. After I prayed about it and got more informed and saw that it was really real, and I saw how it was affecting our community and hitting our community, I believe my thoughts were that we've got to be in position as the church to be first responders for our community. If government, if the city, if no one else is there for our community, the church needs to be there for our community. Leading the church through a pandemic was schizophrenic. It was fearful, it was confusing, chaotic, and unknown. We had never, at that point in 17 years of pastoring in our community, had never experienced anything like it. So much uncertainty. It was very fearful, it was very uncertain, and it was very hurtful to not be able to fellowship with our church family as we are used to doing in the spirit of fellowship. Having to shut down the church and go virtual, if I can be transparent, had a dual effect. On one side, our church was sensing before the pandemic hit that we needed a change, that church as usual was not the order of the hour. And so when the doors of the church closed due to the pandemic, it was somewhat refreshing in a sense that, okay, even in the chaos, perhaps God is doing something new and unusual that we don't quite understand yet. That even in this chaos, God is up to something. This is a sovereign setup. Leading a church through the pandemic and going virtual initially exposed the weaknesses in our game as a church. There were many churches who were already online, already virtual, were very comfortable in the virtual space, had mastered their systems, their production, and all of the bells and whistles that go along with virtual church. Our church was somewhere in the middle. We'd had some experience online and some presence online, but realized that we did not have the strength and the readiness to go virtual. It was exhilarating to see that our reach, instead of hitting the same 250 people, 300 people a week, we're now hitting 1,500 people a week. Those numbers increased, but over time, and I know pastors can relate to this, over time, it got lonely preaching in an empty sanctuary to a camera and a camera crew. We began to miss the fellowship of the saints, the communion of the saints, the coming together, and it began to get a little old, preaching to an empty building. You know, not having church and gathering physically over a period of time had a great effect on our church family. Our church is like 50, 60% millennials. But I think our millennials were greatly affected. Though millennials did not, their primary pursuit was not the church gathering, I think that the church gathering provided a home base and a sense of community, which is big to our millennials. But one thing that was amazing that I sense affected our millennials was an opportunity to serve our community. And I saw millennials who may not have been able to come to church, but they showed up in the community, on the block, in the hood for causes to distribute food, to distribute masks, to serve others who were in need. Looking back just, a year or so out from the pandemic, overall the church was helped by the pandemic. The overall effects were that churches focused in on what was essential. We could no longer play church. When the pandemic hit, if you really have a ministry, if you really love the community, if you really care about people, this was the time for the church to rise up. Some of the things we've done to keep our church members plugged in and connected was using social media to communicate, using our live streams, using virtual platforms like Zoom to continue to communicate with our leaders, to continue to communicate with different groups within the church, to try to keep them connected. After much prayer and planning and talking with our leadership team, we do not plan to go back to church as usual. One of the leadings and promptings that we sense God doing in Freedom Church International is that we are pivoting from an institutional church to an organic church. We're focused less on the Sunday experience and more on organic relationships and doing life together Sunday through Sunday.
My experience was definitely one of uncertainty. Like a lot of people, I really didn't know what to expect. I had just recently found out that November before we went on lockdown in March that I was expecting. It was very hard for me to, understand what was going on because I had previously lost a baby. So for me to actually be able to conceive a baby and here's this pandemic coming along, it definitely was a period of uncertainty for me. And then here I am carrying this life that, I've always wanted. So it was definitely a period of uncertainty. I was shocked that I could not attend church as usual. Growing up in the church all my life, I knew nothing but church every Sunday. So I really didn't know what my new normal would be like, especially, not having that fellowship with my church family, and that's something that's very important to me. So not being able to, be around them, feel their embrace, touch them, have a conversation with them, high five my neighbor, it definitely was something that, I took for granted. It affected me, and I definitely got into a place where I felt so lonely. COVID-19 has affected me mentally in, me always having racing thoughts. Could I be next? Could, my child catch COVID or be affected with coronavirus? Spiritually, it has affected me in a lot of ways. I feel that I have had to trust God like never before. I have had to lean not on my own understanding because even though I may not understand exactly what's going on around me with the virus and now the vaccines, I have to trust God to know that, I will be okay and my family will be okay as well. COVID-19 has affected my relationship with my friends and family by showing me who was really my friends and who was really family. If someone is your friend or someone is your family or you consider them close, you're going to want to check on them. You're going to want to ensure that they're okay. That's definitely a priority. And I got to see who was my friends and who was family. So my faith has never wavered during this pandemic. My relationship with, God has definitely been, tested because how can God allow something to come and just, swift the nation? But I definitely have, kept the faith in my church family, in my, community of believers that I'm plugged into. Is definitely fundamental for me to be engaged in social media because my church has a social media presence that allows me to still stay connected even though we're not physically together. I definitely believe that, God is going to continue to keep us and, make sure that we're okay and that our families are safe as well.
Can I keep it real or should I?
Oh, please, keep it a buck.
When I first found out we were not having church in person, I was happy. When I tell you I was excited, I was so glad. I've served in ministry for years. It's something that I've always done, and I love to do it. I'm just tired of church as usual. I feel like we need to switch it up. We need something new. And honestly, shutting down church and not having church in person woke something up in me. It woke up a new dimension of serving, actually, to where I could serve in a different way. I can serve using technology, which I love. I thought it was the best thing to happen to the church in the 21st century. The effect that COVID-19 has had on me mentally and spiritually has a dichotomy to it. It kind of went both ways, honestly. And I can't say which side dominated the other, but I was definitely equally relaxed and chilled as I was anxious. COVID-19 has brought me closer to my family. I'm the type of person that's always going, always got something to do, always working. I want to be productive, and a lot of times that pulls me away from my family. It gave me a chance to slow things down and really embrace every moment that I had with my family. On the flip side of that, I'm naturally an introvert. I love being by myself, and I think that became my detriment. It actually turned out really bad for me. There were times where I was extremely depressed and put myself in that funk and wouldn't get myself out. I had to stop myself. I was like, yo, why am I letting this get me like this? I'm taking this quarantine way too far. So it definitely affected me, and it's something that I'm still working towards, being more active with my friends, more engaging, more social. Something I've done to stay connected in my faith, keyword has been accountability. I have friends who, you know, they know me. We don't have to talk every single day, but when we talk, they're like, yo, you good? How is your mental health? Like, what have you been doing to keep yourself on track? Have you been working on music? Most of my friends know you can measure my mental health based on what I'm doing musically. I went a long stretch where I wasn't working on anything. That was a wake-up call for my friends to say, hey, how are you doing? What are you being creative? So if you're not being creative, something's wrong. We need to get you back on track. Before the quarantine, our church didn't do live streaming, didn't have a huge internet presence or anything like that. That completely changed and kind of gave me a new challenge to get involved in. Mission changed, like, okay, we can't get people in the seats to give them the gospel. Let's be creative and find another way to do this and use technology and use production and use all those things that I really love to do that. A lot of the stuff that we do for church is just for the sake of doing. It really broke things down to the bare minimums, the necessities, the basics. What do we need to do to help people? And how can I use my skills and my abilities and the gifts God has given me to get people to those needs? My faith now that the pandemic is coming to an end, is the pandemic coming to an end? I don't know, honestly. And maybe that sounds like a lack of faith. I just think the world is changing. Let's just say it like that. The world is changing. We may not ever go back to what we thought was normal. And I don't think that's a problem, honestly. As a matter of fact, it strengthens my faith to know that God is still doing new things. My faith is in the fact that, you know, Christ is going to reveal himself to the real church in a totally different way. It's a completely blow our minds and change how we actually see what church is like. I want to be a part of the next generation of what church is. I want to be a part of that change. And the pandemic forced us to make that change.
I was devastated that I could not attend church as usual. There's a connection between me and the church. Number one, because I've literally been reared in the church. My parents were pastors, and I've literally been in church my entire life. For me, it was very drastic to have to take a step back, even though I needed the break. It was hard, and it still is hard for me to try to make this my new normal.
For me, it was a relief.
Because you're a heathen.
I just got tired of church as normal. I was longing for something different, and I was like, something's got to break, something's got to change. And I didn't expect this, but I was just saying, can we shake up some stuff? God turned us back to Him, and no longer relying on the people, the building. You know,
Yeah.
like He turned us back into our own intimacy with Him.
It was definitely church not as normal anymore.
Yeah, like I said, it pointed me back to Him. Like, you didn't have the weekly things we normally depended on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you depended on your word from your pastor, or you depended on your word from whoever church you attended. But now it's like, when I attend virtually, I'm worshiping, but I'm worshiping by myself. It's like my relationship, I'm working out my own soul salvation with fear and trembling.
I have found out that the church has been such a cloak. The going to church, the building, the association with other people, that I think I got so much used to that it replaced actually developing and having a relationship with the Lord. Yes, we are Christians, we are believers, but I found out through this quarantine that we are all human. And we have struggles and we have battles. We have internal things that we don't want to address. And now God has literally shut everything down so that we could deal with us. But all COVID did is it did just what someone who becomes rich it illuminates what's already there. Yeah, it illuminates what's already there.
How much stronger are we gonna come out of this? Like when we come out of this, the toiling and the pruning and the grooming and everything we've been going through in our private time, when we come out of this, it's refining. I'm looking forward to the positive things of the practical growing that we should have been doing during this time. Not just growing in the word, but like literally applying the word to our everyday life. So my faith is in that we will come out of this refined.
There we go.
And that we will come out of this better than ever.
It looked good in a lab, but new data on the Pfizer vaccine shows that it's working even better in the real world, including against one variant in particular. Here's NBC Bay Area's Anusha Rasta.
It's the kind of news everyone was hoping for when the FDA first approved Pfizer and BioNTech's COVID-19 vaccine last year.
Lasts a long time, really effective in the real world, works across variants, really big study, and it just shows us we're going to get out of this pandemic with the vaccine.